Good afternoon, Ecomo Mine. Welcome to the annual STP Tree Walk this afternoon. My name is Kevin Eckert. I'm an ISA board certified master arborist, president of Arbor Global and president of Smart Trees, and I will be your primary host this afternoon, backed up by my wonderful team from Smart Trees Pacific. So let's talk really quickly, get started here with the slides. We're going to be doing our annual tree walk. We've been doing this every year for over 10 years now. So I don't know if this is the 11th or more annual talk we've had. We've always been outside, but this year with COVID going on, I guess we're going to try something a little different, which has its advantages. We've been doing this as an effort to connect with the community, to get outside and just kind of teach others about the wonderful trees that we find in our different communities. And today's going to be no exception. And I think with the opportunities we have with this new format, we can share even more than we have in the past. So how are we going to do this program? We've got 5 speakers who are going to talk about some of their favorite trees through various video presentations that have been done in the past. We have Steve Nims, who we've known. This has led a number of our wonderful talks. Heather McMillan's a new speaker for us. Josh is going to be on board, and Tyler Schwartz from Line Arboretum. And of course, I'm going to share a couple of my favorite trees as well. Should be a really good time, lots of good information, but let's do a couple of housekeeping things first, real quick, to let you know how it's going to work. First of all, presentation's being recorded, so you can check it out later on. Please keep yourself muted at this point so we can hear, everyone can hear what's going on the presentations. We're going to have an opportunity to ask questions at any time in the chat box at the end of each presentation. We can talk about each tree if anybody has any specific questions about the trees, and then general questions you have, fire them up there and we'll cover those at the end of the 5 presentations. Now, pay attention, because after each of the 3 presentations, there's going to be 2 fun quizzes, 10 total questions. Type your answers in the chat box as we go through, and there's going to be prizes for those who get it. We'll be backed up here by our STP staff. Rachel, Morgan, and Wei are going to help me keep things running smoothly. So without any further ado, why don't we launch into the program? And let's start off with a very interesting, unusual tree, Baobab, Adansodia digitata, with our partner, Josh Sands, to tell us a little bit about it. Carry on, Josh.
Well, I want to thank Smart Trees Pacific for inviting us to be part of the virtual tree tour. My name is Jocelyn Sand, and I'm the director with Honolulu Botanical Gardens, which includes Foster Garden, Liliokalani, Ho'omalohia, Coco Crater, and Wahiwa. And we're here today at Foster Botanical Garden in downtown Honolulu, which is known for many of its rare and historic trees. Some of our trees date back to the 1800s, and we have 21 trees on this 14 acres that are designated as exceptional trees due to their age or their rarity or their historic value. Those trees are denoted by special gold labels, and they are protected by the City and County of Honolulu ordinances. Today I want to actually show you one of my personal favorites, the African baobab, known in Latin as Adansonia digitata. Now this tree was planted around 1940, and it truly is one of my favorites, and I'm going to tell you some special parts about it. These grow in Africa, and the largest of them have been measured at over 150 feet in circumference and over 50 feet in diameter, and some of them are suspected to be over 2,000 years old. Now, sadly, in recent years, about 13 of the oldest ones of them have collapsed. Their main trunk has collapsed, or portions of the tree died off. Researchers do not completely understand the phenomenon, but they suspect it has something to do with climate change. This tree is what I think of when I think of the dramatic, arid African landscape. This squat, compact, stout trunk emerging off of a flat savanna. And I want to take a look at this trunk with you because, yes, it stores a lot of water. And a lot of people think that the water is because Africa's dry and it needs the water for storage, and that's not untrue. However, the magic of the water is the fact that that water puts pressure on the tree cells in the trunk. Each tree cell is made more strong by the constant pressure of the water against it. And that strength helps prevent these trees from collapsing under their own weight. Researchers have found these trees to be comprised of over 80% water by volume, which is outstanding. Most trees are around 30–50%. The flowers are nocturnal, so I don't have any for you right now. It's the afternoon here at Foster Garden, but I have a picture for you, and I think they're amazing. These are large. This is quite large. It's about 6 to 8 inches across, and they have kind of a musky smell. They emerge at night, and in Africa, they are pollinated by nocturnal creatures like bush babies and bats and moths. Now this is in the hibiscus family, and if you use your imagination, you can kind of see the resemblance to a hibiscus flower. The thousands of stamens, pollen stamens here, surrounding a long style with the female stigma right up at the top. And these flowers will hang in the tree at night under a long, long stem. And following those flowers will come this amazing pod. And these pods will hang from a long stem up in the trees. And that inspires another common name for the tree called the dead rat tree. Because when you look at the baobab fruits hanging and swinging on their long, long, long stems in the nighttime, it looks like rats are swinging in the trees. Now, giraffes, baboons, elephants have eaten and used all parts of the trees, but it's also a very important traditional African food for people. And I want to share with you some of that features. This is the inside of a pod right here. And this white mass, starchy mass here, can be used for lots of different things. It's very nutritious. There is 3 times the vitamin C of an orange, 50% more magnesium than spinach, calcium than spinach, and magnesium, phosphorus, proteins, lipids, all kinds of nutrients. Now, you could also, back in the day, would also make cream of tartar from this white mass. Another thing they do is you can, when this dries out, you can make a powder from it, and you can sweeten that with coconut milk or water, add sugar, and you have a drink that's very popular in Africa called bouillie. But it doesn't end there. All parts of the tree, before I move on from that, They're actually using it in commercial products now. In 2008, the European Union cleared baobab for human consumption, and in 2009, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration did the same. And if you look at health food stores or online, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of products using baobabs. There's powders that you can put in your smoothies, there's cereal, granola bars, cosmetics, and of course this juice that I found right here that says it contains organic baobab. It has pictures of the great trees there right on it, and it's touting what I mentioned before, the high vitamin C content, over 150% vitamin C. The bark was used for cordage and fiber. The leaves could be sauteed and put into sauces and eaten, or dried and used later as powder. Traditional medicine was taken from all parts of the trees for antiviral, antimicrobial, anti-inflammation, for things like asthma, anemia, intestinal problems, a whole host of traditional medical uses. It really is the heart of Africa. A village might have a baobab tree in the center of the village, and it's the heart of the community. They might bury their ancestors at the tree. Later, when the trunk becomes decayed and hollow, they would use it for houses or for water reservoirs. It also figures into hundreds of myths and legends. When it's dormant in Africa, the trunk is bare, of course, and then there'll be nothing but the tangled branches at the top, which actually sort of look like root systems. And an old legend tells of the god Thora, who got mad at the baobab and cast the tree out of the garden paradise walls down to earth below, where the tree landed upside down but continued to grow, hence another common name, the upside down tree. You know, I've been here a long time. I don't tell you how many years, but I remember when this cracked. You see how this is expanded? This here and here was once a little crack. And I remember coming out and thinking, oh no, there's a crack in the baobab tree. But it actually has split and rolled back like this and allowed it a whole new stem, a whole new trunk segment to emerge and expand. That's kind of tells you how long you've been around when you see things like that. Let's see, what else? Where else can you see baobabs? Well, the mother of this tree is easily seen on Punchbowl Avenue right by Queens Hospital. It was planted in 1859 by William Hillebrand. There's a grove of them at Cocoa Crater Botanical Garden. The largest one on Oahu is found at the University of Hawaii campus at Manoa in front of the art building. There's 10 trees right along Ala Moana Boulevard in Ala Moana Regional Park. And there's one at Kamehameha campus, Kamehameha Schools campus, Kapalama. And that tree was originally planted in 1891 on the grounds of what is now Bishop Museum, which was their first campus, and it was planted by their first graduating class in 1891. 14 boys planted it in a ceremony attended by Queen Liliuokalani. And in 1930, they moved the tree up the hill to the new Kapalama campus and had a special rehoming ceremony, and they reunited that original graduating class of 1891 for that in 1930. I hope you can come down and see this tree and all the trees at Foster Garden. We'd love to see you here. What gives Foster Garden such a great sense of place for me is the way it has sustained through history. This garden dates back to Queen Kalama, and since then it has been nurtured by many, many great tree lovers like German botanist and physician William Hillebrand, of course our benefactress, Mary Robinson Foster, and our two first directors, Dr. Harold Lyon and Paul Weisick. And 1 hour in this garden can give you peace and perspective and tranquility. So please come down and visit us, and mahalo for watching.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Josh, for that great tour of Baobab. Interesting tree. I remember when I was growing up, I was fascinated with this tree in National Geographic when I was young, seeing the people living inside the hollow parts of the tree. Had no idea it had so many different things you can do with the fruit, although I can't imagine they're going to advertise a lot of the things they eat with the dead rat appellation. So at any rate, neat, interesting. I saw a couple of questions coming up. One about countries, how many countries? There's 32 different African countries that Baobab grows into, and I see Heather put a little link on that for folks that want to look a little more into it. There's some big ones in Madagascar. I think it's native in Madagascar as well. And there's some big ones in Australia, one of which I've worked on in Perth. So really, really neat tree. At any rate, if there's no other questions specifically about Baobab, why don't we launch into the next presentation, which is Talamugra, which is an unusual tree in line arboretum that Tyler Schwartz is going to tell us all about. So take it away, Tyler.
Good morning, tree community. My name is Tyler Schwartz, and I'm here to do a tree walk with you. I'm a certified arborist, and I work at the Lion Arboretum, and we're here today to talk about the Chalmugra tree, also known as Hydnocarpus anthelminthecus. This tree specimen right here is about 30 feet tall with a diameter of breast height of about 20 inches. The accession number, which we keep at Lion to identify us of all the facts on our plants, is listed as 810879, which tells us that this particular tree was accessioned and brought into the collection in 1979. So it's been here for quite some time. And the real reason that this tree, one of the main uses of this tree and what makes it so notable is that it was used as an early cure for Hansen's disease or leprosy. The Chalmugra group, which this tree belongs to, are noted for their ability to extract Chalmugra oil. And I've got a little sample of the fruit right here so that you can see the process. As you can see, when you split the fruit open, you can then take the seeds and extract a fatty oil from the inside of the seeds, and that is used for the treatment of Hansen's disease early on. This tree was first noted to Western medicine in the early 19th century by a Western naturalist named Roxburgh. From that point on, it was also documented in the 1850s, starting in a 1854 paper by another naturalist and surgeon named Mawap. And there was actually a process where this tree was misidentified originally as Gynocardia odorata, which is a tree of a very similar growth habit. But the true Chalmugra oil that people look for, again, that comes from these fruits and seeds here, is extracted from the genus Hydnocarpus, most notably the Whiteiana, but also the Hydnocarpus anthelminthecus, which we have today. You can see that it has compound alternate attached leaves, and it's just a really fantastic specimen, and I'm happy to be here at Lion Arboretum presenting to you guys today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tyler. Well done. Interesting tree, not one that I'm particularly familiar with, but interesting in some of the medicinal values. It seems like many of the trees that I encounter in some of these cultures have some medicinal value somewhere, and that's interesting that it was curing Hansen's disease. In fact, as we're going through, pay close attention because the answers to the quiz questions are being given in each of the presentations. So not seeing a lot of questions on this one. So why don't we launch into the next presentation, which is going to be one of my personal favorites, Lignum Vitae, Tree of Life. So let's take it away.
Aloha, my name's Kevin Eckert. I'm a board-certified master arborist based here in Kailua, Hawaii. Been doing this for a little over 40 years. Got a couple of forestry degrees, but have been working as an arborist. Got the best job in the world. Very fortunate to be able to work with trees and people and get that interchange going on and make the world a better place through trees. And today I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to share with you some little fun facts and that about a couple of my favorite trees on the planet. And I got a lot of trees. People ask me about what my favorite tree is, and it's kind of tough. But in this particular case, I picked out a couple that are high on my list. The first one being Lignum vitae, right here. The botanical name, for those of you that care, is Giacomo officinale. And then we'll talk a little bit later about breadfruit or ulu tree, Arborist altice. Lignum vitae is one of my favorite trees because it's just an interesting tree. It's got a lot going on. I think it's a pretty attractive tree, and it's just got interesting stories. It's just a fun tree all the way around. I mean, as a tree species, it has a lot of diversity. It's a relatively small tree, slow growing. I mean, it's capable of getting up to 60 feet in its natural environment. It's from the Caribbean, northern South America, even Key West is where its natural range is. But it has been planted around in a lot of different areas in the tropics and whatnot. That's where it originates, and it's very common now in Hawaii. It's being planted in Honolulu as a street tree. It's a very attractive street tree, I think, very manageable. But it's very interesting. It grows slow. You're probably not going to see it more than 30 feet tall in most environments, even though it can get larger. But it's got an attractive green color. It's got a small robin's egg blue flower that goes into a dehiscent golden orange fruiting body with bright red seeds. So it's kind of pretty all the way around. The only challenge with it that I find is, and in my yard I have this one here, is the seeds very prolific and very sticky. So they stick to your feet and you track them in the house and whatnot. So it's a bit of a sanitation issue just keeping those things clean. But there's a trade-off in everything, and I think it's well worth it. Also, they're a very interesting form. I find them interesting in that they have this mottled bark, much like a Sidium guava species and some of the eucalyptus. So it's kind of attractive between the flowering and the fruiting and the form and the bark coloration. It's a neat tree to look at and to see. It adds a real element of interest in my opinion. Now, it's from the Caribbean, the northern part of South America, but in the 16th century it really got a lot of movement around because it's got a really interesting property, and this is one of the fun things I like about it. This tree has the densest wood that's traded in the world. It's got a Janka scale. Janka is hardness of wood that's really, really high. This wood will not float. In fact, if you get a chunk of Lignum vitae, it's like a chunk of lead. It's dark colored and it's just heavy. It's very oily, and these are some of the properties that make it so valuable around the world, especially back in the early days. They used it in the sheaves of pulleys on ships and the truncheons on ships. British police officers, the billy clubs they used were originally made of Lignum vitae because they were very sturdy, and I'm told that they could strike you without leaving marks, which was an attraction for them at the time. They were used in bowling pins, in mortars and pestles and things like that. I mean, lots of things going on. But what's really neat about it is that it was used in the first clocks that were used for navigation. When they built the first clocks, they needed to have a lot of accuracy, and they didn't use a lot of diamonds and things like that, but also they need to keep them working well. And because of the density and the properties, the oily properties of the Lignum vitae, the gears and some of the bushings in the first clocks used for navigation on sailing ships was made out of Lignum vitae wood. And so it really helped navigation around the world in the early part of moving around. The other thing is it still has been used for the bushings in power plants on big turbines and in the bushings on the propeller shafts of ships. Another fun fact is that the Nautilus, the first U.S. nuclear submarine, the bushings for the propeller shaft were Lignum vitae. So we had modern technology being crossed over with ancient technology, if you will. I was doing some work on the mainland in the Northeast in the 1980s, and they were changing out the big turbines in the hydropower plants on the Connecticut River. And they'd been built in the early 1900s. And what was interesting is those bushings were made of Lignum vitae. And they wanted to replace them with Lignum vitae, and they couldn't find enough large Lignum vitae around so much, which is one of the challenges when you get a wood that's so valuable. is it gets out and it's on the CITES list as a potentially endangered tree. So we want to try to protect it and get it out as much as we can. Now, lignum vitae is, people say, well, what's the common name? That is the common name. Giacoum officinale is the botanical name, but lignum vitae is Latin for wood of life. And the reason it's called wood of life is because of the medicinal properties. Another fun fact about lignum vitae is it's got a couple of chemical compounds that have been recently discovered, but it was known back in the 16th century to be medicinal. They used from the wood and the bark, they would make a tea, and from the dark heartwood, they would get some resins that were good for, they were anti-inflammatory, they're good for gout, they're good for arthritis, for sore throats and things like that. There's not a lot of good data on this from what I know, but they used it for venereal disease, and some of the folks thought that was good, and it has been said to be used as a contraceptive. Again, I'm not sure I trust it, I'm not recommending it, but this is some of the fun stories that are out there about lignum vitae. So it's a really wonderful tree. I think it's a good tree to have out in the landscape. It's attractive, it's kind of fun, it's got a lot of interesting stories. It's got a little bit of a problem with dropping the seeds to be aware, but other than that, it's a nice tree. Another interesting fact about this particular specimen is this is an Arbor Day tree. From the Arbor Day program we've gone on for the last 25 years, I got this tree as a small little specimen about 20 years ago, planted it out here. It grew faster than I expected. Mulch was the key there, I think. But it is now grown. It's probably a good 10, 12 inches in diameter at the base, 20 feet tall and 20 feet wide. So we have been enjoying this tree for many, many years. Thank you very much to Arbor Day.
All right. So, not sure what else I can say about one of my favorite trees, lignum vitae. Not a whole lot of questions there. Again, interesting tree, lots of really great stories. And again, wanted to share about Arbor Day, kind of let folks know. I think everyone's pretty well aware of it, but we keep that going and we give away a lot of good trees. And there's a lot of those out there in the environment these days, making our communities greener. And we just need to get some more out there. So good deal. So why don't we move into the quizzes? I think it's time for the quiz, the first 5 questions of our 10-question quiz. And so here it is. So what we'd like you to ask you to do is we'll come up with a question. We'll give you 15 or 20 seconds. Write your answer in the chat box. And you remember, we've given you all the answers. The first response to get the question is going to get a point. And then the top 3 people at the end of our 10 questions is going to get the prize. So let's move right along here. So the first question from my presentation: does anybody remember what the Janka scale determines? When someone says the Janka, what are we looking at here? So if you were paying attention with the information we gave you, Janka, okay, I see a lot of folks coming in, and they were a good deal. Hardness of wood, good job. So let's move to the second question. What is the name of the popular African drink made from baobab? That might be a little tougher. Josh mentioned that. I think I can remember. Does anybody remember? There's a lot of things that came from baobab, a lot of useful things, but she said there was one drink that was pretty popular, and I believe it began with a B as well. I'm not sure spelling is going to count here, but what was that? Oh, yay. All right. I'll let the judges determine who got that. Again, spelling I don't think counts. The third question of the first 5 we've got is, where is the largest baobab tree on Oahu? You see, a lot of folks know that. It's at UH Manoa Arts Building. And one little interesting bit of information about that: when we had the ISA conference here in 2007, we used that tree as one of our climbing competition trees because it's such a wonderful tree. So let's move on to the fourth question. How old are baobab trees? Suspected age. We're not sure for sure, but Josh mentioned the potential age of baobabs. Pretty old, as I recall, 2,000 plus years. And I see a couple of folks got that up pretty good. And finally, the 5th of the 10 questions we're going to do right now: what part of the Chalamorga tree is used for early leprosy treatment? So Tyler showed you a number of parts of the tree and was talking about. He said there's one part of the tree that was used specifically for leprosy. And I see a number of folks got the seed oil. Good job. Good job. All right. So we're going to have another quiz at the end of the next several series.
Kevin,
We're going to start. Yes.
I just got one question. Someone had asked, where does the lignum vitae grow mainly before we move on?
Mainly, I think in Oahu. I think I saw that they were looking, where could they see it? You know, the city, it's one of the city trees, and you can see them very commonly along the streets in Hawaii Kai. Going around there, you can check those out there. You can also see them in the botanical gardens. I'm pretty sure there's some in Foster, but I would suggest Hawaii Kai is a good spot. You can check them out, and they're at UH. There's some in UH as well. So yeah, several. In fact, Matt, I see Matt's filling in. There are several at the UH Manoa campus, and I'm also seeing Carol's putting in here. There's an Ainahaina Library. I think that's right too. King Middle School. A lot of folks are putting it in. Oh, that's right. And Dan Donnell just reminded me the new parklet in Wailea that we just put in, that Trees for Honolulu's Future put in, has got some lignum vitae in there. And Mililani Town again on the side of time. So it's not an uncommon tree. Take a look at it. It's kind of vase shaped, not real descriptive until it starts flowering with those pretty flowers and of course those bright red seeds. So yeah, thanks very much for that question. Go out, check them out. And let's move into the next tree, Kate, that Heather's going to share with us. So let's take it away, Heather.
All right, aloha, and I'm pleased to be part of your next stop on your tree tour here today. We are in the Ahupua'a of Waikiki in the Valley of Manoa, here on the campus of University of Hawaii, right behind Bachman Hall. My name is Heather McMillan, and I am the state's urban and community forester. I also coordinate the Ka'ulunani Urban and Community Forestry Program. And the tree that I wanted to share with you today is this tree here. There's actually a pair of them who keep each other company. The botanical name is Blaia sapida, in the Sapindaceae family, or the soapberry family, which is the same family as our native Lonomea. It is native to West Africa, and it's very common and loved throughout the West Indies, especially in Jamaica, where it is called aki, and it is the national food, aki and saltfish. So you might have heard some reggae songs talking about the love of aki. And these are the fruits. The tree is fruiting now, so we're really lucky that we get to see these fruits. My dear friend, an ethnobotanist named John Rashford, did a wonderful ethnobotany of aki. He is Jamaican. And actually the fruit, it's a food plant. The food is high in vitamin C, but it can be very poisonous if you don't know how to prepare it. So don't go picking these fruits and cooking them up on your own. You need some local knowledge, some indigenous knowledge about how to prepare it. One of the things that is a clue that they talk about in Jamaica, and John writes about in his work, is that you know the fruit is ready for eating when it smiles at you. And that means when the fruit has cracked open and the seeds are exposed. So you can see that none of these are smiling. These are not ready to eat. So they're good for illustration purposes here. But please don't try cooking this at home. So if you're interested in trying to grow an aki tree of your own, they do grow from seeds, and there's quite a lot of them here on the ground. So you can try your luck with some of the seeds, but they also grow from the suckers that shoot out from the roots. So I don't know how happy Roxanne Adams would be if you came by and nicked one of the roots here, but just so you know, there are multiple ways to propagate this awesome tree. I wanted to share this particular tree with you because it is very dear to me. It was dedicated to the memory of Dr. Nina Eckert, who was my professor. She was the chair of my dissertation committee. She is an amazing anthropologist and biologist and botanist, ethnobotanist, and she really lit a fire in me for understanding the relationship that plants have with people, and how there's this dynamic reciprocal relationship, and how we influence plants and plants completely influence us, and what that has to do with our health, but also our identity. And so she passed away in 2009, and it's always a comfort for me to be able to come here to this tree and feel like I am in her presence. Trees are amazing like that. I mean, people plant them when a baby is born, which is common, but we also plant trees in the memory of a dear one who has passed. And so this is an example of that. So I encourage you to come check out the Aki tree here at UH Manoa, and when you do, give an aloha to Professor Nina Eckert as well. Aloha.
Right. Thank you very much, Heather, for that information on Ake. Neat tree. And again, another one that's not as common so much, but some of these things, we kind of think we should get more of these out in the environment, out in our landscapes, in our community landscapes and that. So I don't see a whole lot of additional questions about the tree, but if anyone does have, we have Heather online, so she certainly can fill in, and we got some good dialogue going on with this. And I kind of like the idea someone had about that she should be doing some reggae dancing while she was doing that presentation. But the next time we do it, we can get into that. So without further ado, let's move on to the next tree. And Steve Nems is going to take us on a tour of one of our common trees, an important tree in many areas, Kiabe. So take it away, Steve.
Hello, my name is Steve Nems. I'm a consulting arborist, and the name of my company is called Tree Solutions and Environmental Consulting Services. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Kiabe tree at the Halekulani Hotel that in August of 2016 unfortunately uprooted and fell over, and what it took for us to preserve the tree, and also a history of why this tree is so important to the community and the area of Waikiki. A little history on the Halekulani Hotel was, this was all oceanfront property, and it was a place where Native Hawaiians would fish, and also was called the healing area because there was a stream that came from the mountains and down and came through this area and into the ocean. So this water was a mixture of both salt and fresh water, and a good fishing area. In 1883, Mr. Lures bought the property and built a home where he allowed and welcomed anyone who to come by, especially the Hawaiian fishermen and whoever else was in the area, to have a glass of water, clean up, and sit down and relax. Actually, in 1887, we don't know who she was, but her name was Florence Hall, and she may have been a relative of Mr. Lures, planted the Kiabe tree in 1887. It's a thornless Kiabe tree from the mesquite family. And that's where it was planted and has stayed ever since. The Lures family eventually built little bungalows around on their property and turned it into a small resort hotel. As the fishermen came in and back, and they were welcome at all times, Hawaiians named the area Halekulani, which means the house befitting heaven. And that's how it's got its name, Halekulani. So the Lures built the bungalows, and they were rented out to different people. At that time, the only way you came to the islands was on either a ship, Matson, or whichever ship may have come in, and they were welcome at this area, and then they were able to relax on the beach in the area. The Lures kept the property till 1917, and then they sold it to the Kimballs. The Kimball family continued to keep the house and kept the area open, and officially named their hotel the Halekulani and had an open area, and people were welcome, and they were able to relax in this area. And at that time, they were able to just stay and take and have a relaxing time. Actually, at that time, I think the bungalows rented for between $5 to $15 a night, depending on which ones you wanted. In the 30s, the Kimballs decided to expand their operation, and they built a two-story building, which you can see in the background. And this became the new Halekulani Hotel. And befitting the hotel and the way that it became the gathering spot, they had a small restaurant that was near the kiawe tree. And it became known as the House Without a Key. And that's what it's still called today, the House Without a Key, because it was open to everyone at any time they wanted to come in. As time went on, the kiawe tree became a landmark for the area and became a spot where people would come and gather at the House Without a Key, and also it became a spot where they would have weddings, parties, and all types of entertainment that continued on throughout the history of the Halekulani to this day today. In 1960, the last Kimball passed away, and they sold the property to a group called the Halekulani Corporation. And it was a group of different people from I think mainly from Japan corporation that bought the property. And then they decided to expand it. They kept it the way it was, and then in around 1980 they turned it into a hotel that has 450 rooms, and it became a 5-star hotel where many people gathered and stayed here all the time. So what happened was in the August of 2016, the tree in the evening unfortunately uprooted and fell over and laid on its side. Officials from the company that owns the Halekulani, and at that meeting we talked about the tree. It did have to go through translators, so I was hoping that they were translating the way that I was saying it, but their two concerns were, one, safety, and two, the view. Because number one, the view is for people that are at a restaurant, they want to see the water and the ocean. So I talked to them and said that this kiawe tree is the oldest resident of this hotel. It's been here longer than everybody else, since the 1880s, I told them, and that the tree is a healthy tree, and just like all of us, including myself, I had my gray beard here, said that things get old and certain things need to rest. It doesn't mean that if it rests, it doesn't mean that you have to get rid of it. So this tree fell. I could not have dropped this tree in a better spot than where it was. It didn't fall into the water. It didn't fall onto the stage or towards the hotel. It just fell parallel with the fence in a perfect spot, out of the way of any events that they have. So I just said that basically this tree is resting. It just needs a rest. It doesn't mean it's dead. It doesn't mean we can't bring it back. And it doesn't mean that we can't take care of it. And I have fortunately been able to travel to a few different areas, and I've been in Japan, and that the Japanese take care of their plants and their bonsai plants and take care of all of their trees immaculately, taking very good care of all their trees. So I said, this is just another situation that we have. So I said, what we want to do is prune the tree out so that you have a view from the tables under the tree, and that way people can see under there and they can still enjoy the tree. The tree is actually laying down in a position that you can actually walk up to it and you can sit on the tree and have your picture taken. So weddings can still be done under the tree. Other things can be done under the tree, and it's out of the way, and it doesn't affect the stage, and it can keep on going. So we want to try to do that. So what we said is that let's see what happens in 6 months to make sure that the tree is thriving and putting out new growth, and then you can make a decision after that. So other mitigation is that we built a wall that you can see later when you walk over there, a concrete wall around the back side, so that we could cover up the root structure, and then we said we could just put vines over that and have it look nice. So we were able to cover it up and make that aesthetically pleasing, and then prune the tree and have it growing up, and eventually it will grow. It won't be the same as it was, but it's just going to be a new tree in the same spot. So that's been 4 years ago, and as you can see, the tree is still healthy and looking good. So the mitigation worked. We're able to preserve the historic kiawe tree, and I think everybody is, so far as I know from the management, are happy with it, and they're satisfied with what we have. So now the thing is just to try to have it keep on growing taller and taller, and we preserve the tree, and that's pretty much the story of the kiawe tree. After we pruned the tree and we raised it up, and we had meetings with all the corporation heads and decided to keep the tree, one of the things I noticed on the tree was that when you look at the tree, we left the stump that's to the side, which you can see in the background. And that portion of the tree, if you look at it from different angles, people see different things. Some people see a dog, some people see a bird, some people see different animals. And when I look at it, I see a bird that's overwatching and protecting the tree that still remains. So if you look at it that way, I think it has a little interesting story that can be told, and I think guests will be happy to take a look at the tree, and they can decide themselves what they think the stump looks like.
Hey, thanks very much, Steve. That was great. I mean, we got an element of history and everything else involved with that, and some great ideas on how to preserve these heritage trees, which are so critical. I mean, we like to plant trees, and of course that's important, but in my opinion, I think we need to do more to save some of our heritage trees, the existing trees like this one. And Steve's given us some great ideas, some great tips on this. Now, one question that was asked is, was kiawe brought here to feed for cattle? And in fact, my understanding is the first prosopis kiawe was brought back in 1828 by a Catholic missionary who brought seeds from the Royal Garden at Paris to plant here. And I believe they were planted in Kahala, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not positive about there. And also, and from there they've spread out, obviously. But 1828 is the published date of when it started here. And then another question: why do some kiawe have thorns? And I think it's just to be difficult. But no, seriously, thorns, hairs, all these things on various trees are grown or are evolved over time to protect them from their predators, to make them be able to survive and thrive in the environment that they established in. And then so you get thornless varieties, which are mutations, and sometimes they're hybrids. People make them, they're more attractive. I mean, a kiawe without thorns, what's there not to love about something like that? So at any rate, again, thanks very much, Steve, for that wonderful story, that wonderful history about this kiawe and kiawes in general, and some great ideas to preserve our trees. So let's move on to the next one. And I also want to thank everybody who's adding things to the chat. Some really great discussion going on in the chat. Keep that going. Keep that going. That's wonderful stuff. So now we get to do another one of mine. I'm not sure why I got 2 trees, but I did. So let's start and talk a little bit about a very important tree, our ulu tree.
Another of my favorite trees is breadfruit, locally known as ulu, Artocarpus altilis, which is a domesticated descendant of Artocarpus camansi. These are wonderful trees, very widely known, very valuable in many ways wherever they're found. They originated over in New Guinea, the Maluku Islands, which is near Borneo and New Guinea, and up in the Philippines, but they've been spread around the world in tropical areas. They're a wonderful source of food and sustenance for a lot of folks. They're a relatively fast-growing tree. Soft-wooded, they'll get to be up to 85 feet tall. Typically, we see them 40 or 50 feet where we mostly see them, but they'll get pretty tall in areas. They have this very interesting leaf. There are hundreds of different varieties of this. It's been cross-cultivated so many times. And in fact, we're very fortunate in that one of the worldwide experts on that, Dr. Diane Rigoni, has the largest collection of breadfruit on Maui that she's collected from 50 different countries, I think it is, over the last 20 years. So it's a really good resource for us locally for breadfruit. But as I said, they're very valuable. They have a very interesting history, both locally and around the world. They were brought around as a good food source. In fact, any of you that are familiar with Mutiny on the Bounty, if you remember, that was the whole purpose of the Bounty sailing to Tahiti, was to pick up breadfruit and bring them back to Jamaica to feed the slaves at the time, because they were having food shortages. Unfortunately, it wasn't very successful because the people didn't want to eat the fruit, but that's a whole nother story beyond the movie itself. But the fruit, these are very prolific, which is one of the attractions of them. I mean, they'll put on 50, 100 fruit, a well-producing tree in a year. 2 to 5 pounds typically here in Hawaii. There's several different varieties with different flavors and different consistencies, but they're called breadfruit because when you cook them, they have the consistency of bread. And when you do cook them, you can use them when they mature or after they're more ripe and more soft. You can do them a lot of different ways. I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity, both in Hawaii and then through many of the Pacific Islands, to be able to share some of the way they've been cooking them with coconut and fish and pork and all sorts of things. They bake them, broil them, fry them, put them on a fire and whatnot. A wonderful source. They're about 30% protein, about I think 10% protein. 30% carbohydrates, about 10% protein. A lot of different nutrients in them. If you compare them to potatoes and rice, which would be, I guess, considered comparable, they're much more nutrient rich in those sort of areas, so they're a really good source of food. We even make here in Hawaii ulu poi, which would be poi from the kalo plant. You can make a form of ulu poi from the breadfruit plant as well. But they're a nice tree. They get rather large, showing small landscapes. They're probably not the best choice, but I have my Malafa breadfruit here, which is one of the more desirable breadfruits in my opinion. Doing grow. It's only a couple years old. I planted this when it was probably about 2 or 3 feet tall, about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's now about 15 feet tall, and it had its first fruiting this last year, and unfortunately I don't have an opportunity to show you a fruit, but sometimes people ask me, how do you know when breadfruit's ripe? Well, it's kind of an art a little bit, but what you do, and I wish I had one I could show you, but the breadfruit, when they first form, they're kind of globose or oblong, and they're kind of rough around there. As they go ripe, that roughness will go away. They start getting flat on the outside. They'll go from a green to kind of a yellowish color, and around each of the little individual sections, and those, by the way, are individual fruit. A breadfruit is made up of thousands of little fruit all together, but around those edges, they'll start to turn a little brown. So you want to pick them when they're mature, not before they're mature, typically. And that's you'll know they're mature. They'll still be firm, but they'll be relatively flat. They'll kind of have that yellowish color on them. As they get softer, you can wait till they're a little bit softer. You don't want to wait too long because they'll fall off the tree. It'll be no good, but they're prepared a little differently. So you can pick them in that wide range. And that's how you tell when breadfruit are ripe. See, the wood is also considered rather valuable, believe it or not. It's a soft-wooded tree, in my opinion, but they use it for outriggers, and in American Samoa, they use it in the main buildings. It's a very valuable traditional wood that's used to build some of the structures and whatnot. Interestingly, all of the parts of the tree have this latex sap, which is used for caulking boats, and the Hawaiians, I'm told, used it for catching birds. The siki sap they would put in traps, and it would catch birds as well. And some of the compounds here have some phytotoxic capabilities that I understand they can be an insect repellent. I haven't tried it myself, not sure how it works, but I understand that that's a possibility. So another really excellent, fun tree with a lot of good stories and a lot of good potential in it.
All right, breadfruit. What an interesting tree with, again, a lot of good stories, and we could go on quite a bit as it's used traditionally in the cultures and whatnot. And Heather McMillan brought up some good points, reminding us Diane Magoni has 150 different varieties in her thing on Maui, and Claudia said that in the Cook Islands she cooked it like potato salad. I've made mashed potatoes out. There's all sorts of different ways. It's almost unlimited. My wife is half Puerto Rican, and she has a number of traditional dishes from the Caribbean that she likes to cook as well. So breadfruit, interesting plant, fun tree. You see it quite a bit around. So without further ado, our next topic is our tree quiz, the last 5 questions. And understand we got a little bit of a tie going on among a number of folks. So again, let's go through the questions. Write your answer in the chat box. First response to get a question right gets the point. And the top 3 people are going with the most points are going to get a prize. So let's start with the first question. Let's say the 6th question. So how do you know a K is ready to eat? Because it's pretty poisonous if it's not ready. So how do you know? How do you know? All right, looks like some folks are right on top of it, paying good attention. It's kind of fun that way. The fruits smile. They open up their mouths and just kind of smile. So let's go on to the next question if we can. So ulu, I mentioned I got a little backwards a little bit, but what percentage of protein does ulu have? It's a real nutritious fruit and whatnot, but the protein, it's got a pretty good amount of protein in there. So what did I say how much protein that ulu has? And I see a lot of folks are getting it. See, I confused a few, but some got it. So 10% was protein, 30% carbohydrates, 10%, and then there's a whole mixture of a bunch of other things. So good stuff. So what's the next one? Now, how do you propagate a Ka? Do you remember how do you get it to grow? What's the best way to get it to grow? I see a number of folks putting some suckers, some seeds in there. What was the right answer there? Seeds or suckers, either one. So both of them are correct. And then our next question, number 4, next to last. What nickname was the Hawakilani Hotel given by the people that gathered there? Do you remember? There's a couple of nicknames, but Steve came up with one that was really the most common, the most current one that you hear most commonly. What is that? And I see a lot of folks getting it up. So what is it? It is the house without a key. Exactly. Good job. All right. I see some that I like even better. But the 10th question. What 3 characteristics of a mature breadfruit have? And to make sure that's right, remember I talked about it. What did I say were the 3 key things you look at a breadfruit to know when it's right? I see that there's one, there's several, there's 3 different keys. There's a number of ways to see that how it's right. I see some coming. I don't see all 3 of them yet. We're not getting them yet. Keep them coming, thinking this one's a little tougher. All right, I see we got one right there. Smooth yellow and flat texture. Yeah, smooth texture, but all right, firm, flat, and yellowish. Good job. All right, so there's our last question. So we're going to tally up and see if we can determine who our winners are. But while we're waiting, does anybody have any other specific questions about trees in general or any of the presentations that we didn't get answered at this point? I hope you had a good time. You enjoyed it. This was great fun, getting a lot of different folks to share some of our favorite trees with you. Thanks very much for your attention. How are we looking, guys? Do we have a answer? I see a question while we're waiting for that. What does a tree need to do to become exceptional? You've got to put in an application to the Arborist committee to get a tree to become exceptional. particularly tough, but you got to fill things out there, and you can find that online on how to go through that process to get a tree exceptional. Understand exceptional trees very important. Just exceptional trees aren't the only important trees. We have a lot of what I call heritage trees out there. But exceptional will get them protected under the exceptional tree regulation. I see some other questions. A good question. What was the woman's name that developed the Hansen tree here? I don't know. Maybe Heather can help us without that about that particular
I've got
one.
the tally if we're ready.
All right. So a drum roll, please.
Drum
What do we get?
roll. So we've got a four-way tie between Carol, Megan McGeehee, Jade Rhodes, and Dan Donnell. Each of them got 2 questions.
Good deal. All
So,
right. So how do they?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes. So I will be putting my email into the chat box. If you are one of those 4 people, please just send me an email and I can get you your prize.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And I see Matt Ritter, kind enough to put on the exceptional trees in Oahu, a PDF you can check out on those, on that reference. Seeing no other questions, and Rachel has her email up there, I see. Mahalo nui for joining us on this wonderful trip. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did putting it together. I look forward to seeing everybody in the field, hopefully, this year, 2021 in December, and we can return to our walks out in the field, just enjoying our trees with many of the wonderful arborists that you saw here today. So thank you very much again, and we look forward to seeing you out in the field. Plant a tree, save a tree. Aloha.